Unit 7, do not attempt to enter premises. Wait for backup. Do you copy Unit 7? Unit 7?
Yeah, that hasn't aged well. Gung-ho policeman, not a good look. Alright, so Virtua Cop. So this is yet another groundbreaking arcade game that Sega has brought to the Sega Saturn here. Sega actually had a really good run in the arcades with their light gun shooters. They made a bunch of really cool sprite scalers back in the day, like Alien Arcade and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. But Virtua Fighter was groundbreaking for being the first one to use 3D graphics, and it also brought to the table some really interesting gameplay mechanics that would set it apart from other games in the genre. It does make me wonder, though, between Virtua Fighter, Daytona USA, and Sega Rally Championship, why did they think the next major innovation in console technology was going to be sprite scaling? I mean, come on, Sega. But anyway, in Virtua Cop, you take the role of two police officers fighting terrorists, and that's about all the game amounts to story-wise. In regards to the gameplay, using light guns, you take shots at enemies as they take shots at you. You have to take out the enemies before they can get a shot off on you, and you also need to make sure you don't hit hostages either. One interesting thing about Virtua Cop, though, and one thing that set it apart from other shooters at the time, was that shot placement actually mattered. So while you could just aim center mass and take out the target, you would get more points if you accurately aim for the head, or even better, were able to shoot the guns out of your enemy's hands, disarm them. I mean, you are playing as a police officer after all. You should be trying to take these guys alive if you can. And it does make for a really fun shooter, even today. And believe it or not, the Saturn version of the game was actually pretty faithful. Got the graphics pretty spot on, all things considered, and I think it's arguable that the Saturn version actually looks better. However, I hate to say it, but the Saturn version is another game that is really hard to play this day and age, and for one reason and one reason only, this is a light gun shooter. And what that means is that whenever you pull the trigger while you're playing the game, the screen goes black for a brief second, and the gun detects if you're pointing at the light on the screen, which generally highlights the targets. Now, the problem there is that was meant for old tube TVs from back in the day, and thus is not compatible with our modern LCD screens. So you try to play this game today on the Saturn, and it's probably not going to work too well unless you have a old tube TV to play it on. Which it's a shame because Virtua Fighter does still hold up today, but it's just a game that's supposed to be played with technology that is outdated and doesn't really work anymore. You can still play the game with the basic control and even a mouse, but you just don't get the same experience if you aren't physically holding the gun in your hand. The Virtua Cop on Saturn would do very well, so they would of course port Virtua Cop 2 to the system as well, and it would do pretty well as well, despite the fact that it was coming out towards the end of the Saturn's run. And there would be one more game in the arcades, Virtua Cop 3, which I don't hear a lot of people talk about. And it must not have been very well received because there hasn't been a Virtua Cop game ever since. And to be honest, with all the cool shooters that have come out over the years, I think there's a reason that ended up being the case. It's just, shooters have evolved and it's hard for Virtua Cop to keep up anymore. Still, if you can find an arcade game, be sure to give the game a shot. But only play the Saturn version if you have the right TV for it. Anyway, that does it for Virtua Cop. Join me tomorrow as we move on to the next game.